Hey everybody, today I'm talking about my top 10 deck or pool building games. Now these types of games are very popular where you start off with a kind of a basic hand of cards or chits, and as the game develops you invest in new cards or new chits to get more and more powerful to try and help you win the game. I've got some games on here that aren't as overly popular as you'd expect. I haven't got Dominion on there, for example. I haven't got Star Realms or Hero Realms, so there might be something a bit different on here than you would normally expect. And if you want to know a bit more about them or in a bit more depth, then you can check out my individual reviews because I think I've reviewed almost every one of these individually. So let's get started at number 10. So at number 10 I have Tyrants of the Underdark. Now this is a game that's kind of flown somewhat under the radar. It's a mix between deck building and area control. It's set in the Dungeons and Dragons universe and it has quite a generic theme, to be honest, and the board itself is a bit bland, but the game itself is actually really well designed. It's a solid design and it uses that deck building mechanism very, very cleverly. And not only that, it uses an additional kind of mechanism that's a bit more unique to a lot of deck builders, because in this one you can choose to kind of retire your cards. So as you kind of accumulate cards, they have a basic point value, which is what they're worth if they're still in your deck at the end of the game. But you can choose to kind of retire them, or promote them, I think it's called, to put them in, to take them out of your deck, which will ultimately score them a lot more victory points at the end. So you're kind of sacrificing that ability in order to be able to score more victory points. But as I said, it's spliced with area control, so you're going to be kind of accumulating attack points to help you fight around the board, to claim new areas, to get majorities. It's very simple, but that just a few additional things, you know, the combination of the two mechanisms, the promoting aspect, it just comes together very nicely, and this is a game that really impressed me. So check that one out if it appeals to you. That's Tyrants of the Underdark. At number 9 I have Runestones. Now Runestones is a game that came out last year, I believe, by Queen Games. Again, this one kind of took me from nowhere and I wasn't expecting much from it, but I really enjoyed it. It's by Rudiger Dawn, who makes some really solid games, so I probably should have expected more from it. But yeah, it did impress me. So this one, you are basically, you have a standard hand of cards. And throughout the game you're accumulating new cards into your hand, but the thing that makes this one different is that one of the actions you can take is you can take two cards and use both of their abilities, but then the highest one of the two gets taken out of the game. So you're always kind of trying to tinker your deck to, so you can always afford to get rid of those higher numbered cards, which is really cool. And ultimately you're trying to get these cards to collect gems, use those gems to collect artifacts, and then use those artifacts to collect runestones. And those runestones can give you really cool, unique abilities that only you and maybe another player can have. So it's a really nice game that kind of has that economy kind of, or that scaling of resources where you start off with the basics and you get more and more powerful rewards from what you're cashing in. But again, I just love the different aspect of having to take two of your cards and get rid of one of them. It's just a new twist on the deck building genre and it works really well. That is Runestones. At number 8, I have Mombasa. Now, Mombasa is a heavier Euro game by Alexander Pfister, and it has a lot of things going on in the game, in addition to the deck building. But I actually do really, really like this game, and it's lower on the list because I've kind of graded this list on the kind of importance of the deck building in it. But yeah, in this one, you have a standard hand of cards that have different fruits and stuff on them, and those fruits can help you kind of buy new cards, or they can help you kind of up your influence on a certain kind of factions in the games, which will give you more points in return based on area control. But I just like the way that this game you really have to manage your hand of cards, and the more you accumulate, you can kind of set them into these different rows, and when you take an action of each type, all those actions slide up into onto different discard piles, and at the end of the round you can choose which discard pile to take back into your hand. So the strategy in this one is a lot deeper than your standard deck building game, and ultimately it always boils down to your flow and the management of your deck, which is again is a really important aspect of the game, but again not the only aspect of the game. This is a really solid Euro game and definitely want to check out if you like that kind of flavour of deck building, but you want a bit more as well. That is Mombasa. So at number 7 I have Paperback. Paperback is a deck building game where you start with a hand of basic letters, and you're going to use those letters to spell words. And then you can use those words, which will grant you points, to buy new cards into your hand. And the more and more cards you buy, you can obviously make longer and longer words, which can get you more points. And that's basically the idea of the game. So if you like your kind of word games and you like that element of deck building and kind of card crafting, then this is definitely one to check out. It flows really well, very simple, not too much of a rules overhead, and it's just a nice kind of gateway level game that you can introduce to almost anybody. So that's Paperback. A really solid word and deck building game. At number 6, I have the Quacks of Quedlinburg. Now this isn't a deck building game, it's a bag building game. So instead of acquiring cards, you're acquiring these different chits, or these these cardboard tokens basically, and you're putting them into an opaque bag. And then the idea of the game is that you are basically these different, I don't know, like scientists or doctors, and you are pulling out these tokens one at a time in order to try and get as far as you can around this track without going bust. Because if you draw a certain amount of a certain type of token, then you'll go bust. But at the end of every round, you're going to acquire points, which is going to let you buy new tokens, which will have loads of different abilities on that will help you get further and further around that track each time. This is an amazing, fun game, probably one of the big hits of last year for me, and it's just immensely popular and growing in popularity. It seems to be by the month. I think as a Spiel des Jahres nominee, I don't think it won the award, but this is so warranted. Absolutely just a joy to play, a family weight game with a lot of things to explore, loads of different strategies you can try, and just it's very you do take quite a good sense of pride and ownership in your bag as you acquire all these different tokens. And when things pay off the way you want them, then it really is really good fun. A lot more random than your standard deck building game, but that's part of the game and it's part of the fun. That is Quacks of Quedlinburg. At number 5, I have Newton. Now, Newton is another Euro style game, and this one is by Simone Luciani, who makes some really great Euro games, but this one uses that deck building aspect, which a lot of his games generally don't. So in this one, you have a set of basic cards, each with its own action on, and then you're going to use those cards in order to buy new cards into your hand, and you're going to lay them out. But the cool thing about this game is when you take an action, you get, let's say, strength 1, but then you take the same action again, then you get it at strength 2, and then at strength 3. And you can really kind of, ramp up the power of your actions as the game goes on. And also at the end of each round, you're going to take one of the cards you've used, tuck it under your player board, which means that card's gone for the rest of the game, but you still get that action at 1 strength higher. So you've got to have that constant flow of cards coming into your hand, know when to invest in the certain cards, because not only are they important for the action you're taking, but they also have an additional ability on them as well. And it's just a really good fun game, and that deck building does come through. It's not got that kind of random draw because you can pick and choose which cards you want, but again, you need those cards coming into your hand each time, and you can really tailor them to your needs and to ultimately aim for more points and to strategize on what you need. That is Newton, a fantastic Euro game with a deck building aspect. Next, I have Concordia at number 4. So Concordia is another Euro style game where you have a standard, everybody has an identical hand of cards, all the different actions on them. And one of the cards, or maybe even 2 of the cards, lets you buy new cards from the card row, which again will give you more actions you can take and more powerful actions you can take. And the cool thing about this as well is when you play through you're rewarded for playing through more cards in your hand, because the more you play, there's a certain card that lets you pick up all your cards, but the more cards you play, the more money you get in return. But not only are you acquiring these cards or building your deck based on the actions or the abilities you can get, you're also investing in scoring, because each of the cards has a assigned god to it, and at the end of the game, depending on how many god cards of a certain type you get, increases the multiplier of a certain scoring criteria. So say, for example, I had a bunch of Saturn cards. Those Saturn cards will relate to how many different regions I'm in on the board. So it's got that real kind of Matt Gertz multiplier scoring mechanism, which is absolutely brilliant. This is a great game, and that management of the cards is a real fundamental part of the game. So definitely want to check out. This is one of the best games out there, in my opinion. That is Concordia. At number 3, I have Kashgar Merchants of the Silk Road. Now, this is a game based solely on cards, where you have 3 different columns or caravans of cards, and you're basically going to choose one of those caravans to activate each turn based on the card that's in front of those. And one of the cards that are built into those caravans lets you acquire new cards to that column, and you'll tuck it in behind, and then you're basically going to got that constant flow of the caravans. You can really synergize them to ultimately collect resources and cash in contracts to score more victory points. But I just love the the way that you build your different caravans or decks, and you can really kind of use them in certain orders in order to maximize your efficiency. Loads of different things you can try. You can have nice and short, concise and tight caravans, or you can have like long and powerful ones where you don't really mind what comes out because you've got that churning kind of machine. Just a really well designed game, and it's pretty light in its kind of, in general, I think, not too much to think about, but again, you can really strategize and focus on what you want all through the use of building your different decks. So that is Kashgar, Merchants of the Silk Road. At number 2, I have Ollie On. Ollie On is the second kind of chit building game or bag building game where you collect these different tokens. Again, everybody can start with a basic set of tokens. You're going to draw them out and allocate them to your action board, almost in a worker placement style way, to activate certain abilities in order to get more chits as well to your bag. And the cool thing about this game is that you can really tailor your strategy by activating certain spots, which can either make you draw more tokens, or they can let you take these like craftsmen, which let you improve your engine by blocking off certain spots. And it's all about your kind of flow of chits in your bag. And this does have that kind of more random element to it than some of the games I've mentioned, where you are kind of acquiring tokens, putting them into your bag and hoping to draw the ones you want. But you've got a way to kind of streamline your bag by taking out the ones you don't want and allocating them to a permanent board, which gets you abilities. Just the engine building in this game is fantastic. The different strategies you can take is great. Which tokens you're going to add to your bag, which tracks you want to go up. It's just a fantastic game, all based on acquiring new tokens to activate the abilities that you want. So yeah, that element of bag building is so dominant in this game, and it just is great fun, and it's just a fantastic, well-rounded Euro game. That is Ollie On. And finally, at number 1, I have your kind of standard deck building game, which you probably expect from this list. This is Legendary, a Marvel deck building game. There are other versions as well. You can get the Alien one, you can get the Predator one, I think there's a Firefly one, there's a James Bond one, or a Buffy the Vampire Slayer one. So Legendary is a kind of a system where it has a semi-cooperative feel to it, or I play it purely cooperatively, where you have, say, a bunch of superheroes, if you're playing the Marvel one, that is, and then you are basically spending your basic resources, which are shield agents, to acquire new superheroes in order to fight against different villains and different masterminds, to defeat different schemes, and ultimately try and win by defeating the scenario. This game has so much variation in it. So you've got a ton of superheroes, pretty much everybody you can think of if you buy all the expansions. You've got hundreds of different villains and different masterminds and loads of different scenarios, which always makes the game feel different. You'll never ever play the same game twice. Just so much fun, and probably the most replayable game that I have in my collection. This is actually one of the games that got me into the hobby, and I still love it as much as I did when I first played the game. I've got pretty much every bit of content you can with this game, and again, I'll never ever explore it all, but just having it there is great because, as I said, you'll never ever play the same game twice. The deck building is great, the synergies between the cards is fantastic. As you play certain types of cards, you can activate others. Certain types of heroes really mesh well with others, so if you've got, say, 2 Guardians of the Galaxy characters, they'll complement each other really well and boost each other's strength. So really great thing to explore, how all the different characters mesh together. And all the characters are really thematic as well. If you the Hulk, for example, the more you kind of take damage you take, the more powerful you get. Or if you're Wolverine, you base on a kind of rage, on berserk and stuff. So yeah, there's loads of different thematic ties, and ultimately it's just a fantastic deck building game. And when you get your engine going and the decks and the cards that you want come out, you can really make some waves in this game. And also there's some great ways to thin out your deck as well, to make sure you're always getting the most powerful cards in your hand. So yeah, that concludes my top 10 deck or pool building games. This is a genre that's really enjoyable because, again, you can really take ownership of your deck. And these are 10 great games to explore that kind of aspect of gaming on. So I hope you've enjoyed this review or this top 10 list. If you have, please hit like and subscribe to my channel and check out my other videos too. For everyone else, I'll see you next time on Chairman of the Board. Bye.